I suppose we might say that there's really only one goal as we celebrate this Easter, and it's this: look redeemed. For what we celebrate here today is not simply a doctrinal truth that we have to memorize, but rather a reality that you and I are called to live every day of our life. We have to take what we are celebrating here and put it into action every single day of our life. It's always Easter. Look redeemed. And looking redeemed may not be all that easy these days. If we're with others at home, there are probably times that we would rather be alone. And if we're alone all the time, we may be tiring of seclusion. I'm thinking that my dogs are getting tired of me being home so much, and my subscriptions to Netflix and Prime are certainly paying off. And yet, with all of that said, these days are teaching us important life lessons. People are creative in the way that they spend time at home with projects and hobbies. Some of those are new hobbies. Families are getting to know each other better, doing things that maybe they've never spent time doing before. People are getting in touch with people that they've not talked to in quite some time, on the telephone or another electronic means. Hopefully, with life being so out of the ordinary, we are reevaluating in each of our own lives what is truly important, what really matters. This can be a time to reevaluate our relationships with one another and with God. What is the place of faith in my life right now? What do I want it to be? Looking redeemed because of the resurrection is not just a nice fairy tale that is meant for somebody naive enough to believe such a fantastic story. And that is why this year is so important as we celebrate Easter, in the midst of a troubled, fear-filled world. As we sit in our homes this year, we have the opportunity to experience what the first Easter was really like, what the women saw when they went to the tomb. For the first Easter was not observed in crowded churches, as believers belted out their alleluias after a 40-day reprieve. In fact, the apostles on that first Easter were locked in their homes where no harm could touch them. It was dangerous for them to come out. They were afraid. They wanted to believe the news of the women, but the news just seemed too good to be true. They wanted to believe because they were living in such a time of uncertainty and mistrust that they needed hope. If they left their homes, they and their families might be put in great risk. But with the resurrection, they were given new hope. The belief that one day life would get back to some semblance of what they knew as normal. In the midst of their fear, they looked for and found goodness in the people around them. Through difficulty, their faith matured, And they realized the risen Christ was alive in their lives. They were fearless in their acceptance of others, no matter how different from themselves. In moments of uncertainty, the empty tomb gave them hope that new life was possible. And then, as time went on, they could leave their homes. They could spread the good news and look redeemed. When the fear and danger had subsided, their lives blossomed into a new normal, a saved life in Christ. They began gathering together again, singing with a newfound awareness that they had been changed and had nothing to fear ever again. They understood for the first time that out of death comes new life. It's 2020. And this may be the first Easter that we understand what the first Easter was really like. We might come to that deeper awareness and appreciation that you and I die and rise every day. We die and rise and die and rise and die and rise again. And so understand the Paschal mystery more than we even know that we understand it. And the good news that we need to hear today is that the life in which we find ourselves now is not going to last forever. It's also not going to be different anytime too soon, so there's time left to understand what the disciples came to understand that first Easter morning. In the meantime, in the situation in which we find ourselves, let's do our best to look redeemed. That's what the early disciples learned. For them and for us, it can make all the difference in being at peace with a new normal, a redeemed life in Christ.